Hello, everyone. Welcome to another BAF event. Today, I'm very happy to have with me Nikita Buzov, co-founder of Solas Protocol, an on-chain coverage for DeFi position. He's going to be the moderator for the day. And with him, we have JK and Daniel from Stakefish to talk about proof of stake and ways you can earn passive income with crypto. Before we dive deep into the conversation, I just want to make a quick introduction about BAF. We are a 501c3 nonprofit based in California that works with different universities in starting up accredited courses, fostering research, collaboration among students, and eventually launching products. Nikita is a great example of this because he dropped his PhD to start a DeFi project, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, with that said, I think that's enough of an introduction. Nikita, let you take it away. And I know this is going to be a fun hour. For everyone, if you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A section on the right. If they're not addressed, follow up on the chat, but they're generally addressed. So without further ado, Nikita, you can take it away. I'll see you at the end.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So as BJ already said, dropped a PhD to start a coverage protocol to provide, insurance alternative to DeFi products and just, build another Lego piece in the ecosystem. But my background is in computer engineering. I started off in crypto from mining perspective. So, coming from proof of work and now actively working towards proof of stake. So I started building mining farms, back in 2016, 17. We built a few around the world. One of the biggest was like 300 kilowatt in Estonia. And then I started moving into proof of stake and was working with like Prism guys, building like ETH2 validator, running on the testnet. So I'm kind of familiar. Well, I would say very much familiar with staking on the ETH2. But very happy to see you guys at Stakefish building the whole infrastructure across all the different blockchains, because my personal stance is that the future is multi-chain, and we all should collaborate and like build and support networks around the world. But I'll let you, Daniel and JK, introduce yourself now.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having us. So I'm JK. I lead strategy and operations at Stakefish, and Stakefish has been around for 2 years and a half now. And as Nikita has introduced, we're primarily a validator for different proof of stake protocols and different middleware that use staking mechanisms. And currently we're supporting at least more than 24 networks at this point, and we have plans to add additional ones. I'll let Daniel introduce himself as well, and then I think Daniel, you could go to presentations, and I could go to presentations just to kick things off, maybe.
Sure. Yeah. I do protocol research governance work at Stakefish.
Nice. Well, pleasure to have you guys. Let's jump into your presentation to the juicy part.
All right. So JK, do you want me to go first? Okay. Let me present this. I think I could share a tab, right? I can only share screens. Can you, I guess, see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I'm gonna, I guess, talk a little bit about what we do on the protocol and governance side at Stakefish for you guys, if you want to. So I will start by saying that, right, we can say, like, as a protocol specialist, we can manage like many different aspects of the POS ecosystem. And so maybe like a highlight we can take away from this is the sentence that I highlighted in green is, like, we are ecosystem experts and protocol politicians of many of these POS networks that we support. And so the types of work that we cover span, we have to understand infrastructure level insights from our DevOps engineers, decentralization decentralization application metrics, like how decentralized validators are in a network, community interfacing, having a market presence, managing validator and foundation relationships, and of course, network governance. So it's kind of like a broad spectrum, and it definitely gives you a lot of insight and looks into what you can do and get your hands dirty with. So just to right, as this is kind of like pretty broad, I think it also kind of fits in line with what my background is like as well, because my background is all over the place. So I began as a miner a long time ago, like back in 2013, end of 2013, and then expanded into like application development, research. But yeah, I studied biology, religion, computer science, and then focused later on distributed systems and cryptography. And so, right, yeah, this is a bit more of, if you want to kind of have a copy of this, you can take a look. But right, had a Tyler Durden moment of wanting to see basically a new financial system that much better and less corrupt and more transparent than our own in the old world, and definitely aligned with the ideology of what cryptocurrency and blockchain technology could have, especially from self-sovereignty, decentralization, and scalability. But yeah, I have worked all from mining, remittance solutions in the Philippines and Southeast Asia, worked on decentralized exchanges through 0x protocol, had a few stints in big bad pharma, their permission pharmaceutical supply chain applications. I led an IEEE working group on health data availability, worked with educational initiatives, helped set up some DAOs, and then also get opportunities to work on NFTs, and then also within Stakefish and also F2 Pool, our sister company, climate initiatives as well. So it's kind of all over the place, but I think it fits pretty well with the work that I'm able to do as a protocol specialist at Stakefish. And so just to get down into the details here, right? So what are, I broke it down into basically 6 kind of key things that I do on the day-to-day. So there's relationship management with like the different stakeholders in each of these different POS networks that we provide staking services to. So these include like foundations, application teams within them, and then also like investors / the delegators that right stake with us. Another is research. So it's kind of the research into each of these networks themselves, right? Basically, this can be like transparency reports or how decentralized some of the validator set is, and how that relates to kind of like the governance, which I get into later. Then there's also some of the delegator communication of how validators from staking at the community service level, customer service level, we can share what's been going on the networks that we have a very close relationship with from the infrastructure level and the ecosystem level, and how we can communicate that and track it. Next is, and probably one of the more important ones, is being able to, on behalf of the people who delegate to us, right, we get to vote on their behalf on most of these POS networks. So keeping track of all the governance proposals that are happening on each of these networks, analyzing them, and then recommending suggestions internally for the way we should vote on behalf of them. And then, right, basically being able to report back internally to our team and externally through the delegator communications for the updates. And then finally, the special projects that I'll get into in a bit later in a different slide, but special projects, basically whatever else needs to be done from kind of straddling some of the technical and the social aspects of it. Okay, so here are some of the interesting, I guess, special projects that I think I can highlight for some of the stuff I've been doing. So one of them, and what what I've been working on currently is, right, we Stakefish and F2Pool, we are part of a blockchain infrastructure carbon working group, and we've been developing certain methodologies to measure carbon footprint for infrastructure service providers like node operators, mining pools, and POS validators, and then also identify opportunities to create systems to incentivize carbon offset. And it just kind of goes to show like how we can, as an entity, be stewards of our of the planet, and then also potentially, right, incentivize that type of good behavior. Another initiative that I work on is also this Tezos Africa Geographic Validator Decentralization Initiative, where we are identifying opportunities, at least on the Tezos front, to strategically locate different validators or support validators outside of these geographic clusters that are centralized, to enable like other parts of the world to participate in a more efficient manner, so they don't have to like be so far away in terms of literal device placement and hosting, in terms of latency. And so we've been working with Tezos on this with Western Africa, and actually in a month we'll have a similar presentation that I'll share with them too. Another initiative is the Validator Forum that I've been working on, where we give the opportunity to allow validators to communicate with each other in a non-collusive manner. And something interesting around this is that, especially as validator service providers on a specific network, we are inherently competitive and at competition with other validators on the same network. Let's say, for example, Ethereum 2. But when we zoom out and we take a look at other networks, from like the 10,000-foot view, validators like us and other validators like Bison Trails or Chainflow, or Chorus One, et cetera, like we are not necessarily at competition with each other when we zoom out. And so you can kind of imagine it as an intra relationship versus inter relationship, where intra is network level and inter is basically Y level. So the ability to be able to communicate with each other, where kind of collusion or coordination or that may kind of tend to be kind of dirty words, is important still to be able to share that type of information and then and coordinate in a neutral manner. And so I've been working on the ability for validators to communicate with each other, where there's still checks and balances to make sure there's no collusion and centralization and hopefully no corruption there. And then finally, this is also kind of like a inter blockchain or inter network level initiative, where governance proposals across networks are far wide and varied, and there needs to be some sort of standardization to allow validators who are trying to manage, as JK mentioned, more than 24 blockchains at the same time, so that there has to be some standardization so we can keep track and keep afloat on a lot of that stuff. So these are basically some highlights on some of the initiatives that I've been working on as a quick look into what I do. And finally, I think, or maybe more importantly, what you can take away with is like the impact that we have, I think, as a POS validator and as someone in my role, that many other validators have members with, is keeping a finger on the pulse of what is going on in the ecosystems on each of the networks, seeing and being able to stay true to some of the more important ideological motivations to why these networks exist, so that there is no collusion, there's no centralization, and we are going to be maintaining kind of the vision of these networks, so that we don't kind of keep making concessions into bad decisions. And so yeah, I think the job I have is great. I love it. right? We have a big impact from the place that we stand, mostly sometimes neutral. And it's definitely, right, for many people, many of you guys who are looking at future opportunities when you graduate, right? A POS validator is definitely a fantastic place to start your career and get a lot of experience on very broadly as well, especially if you don't want to like tie yourself to a particular network either. And so, right, protocol specialist or protocol analyst is definitely a great opportunity there. But yeah, that is
All right, thank you, Daniel. That was very nice. Before we jump to you, JK, I just want to ask a question, you, Daniel. So your background is a bit in mining, so you are very familiar with proof of work. How do you like? What's your opinion on like proof of work versus proof of stake from, I guess, more grand vision moving forward, and also just from operational standpoint? Because running miners, data centers, that's one thing, but also running validators is a like heavy infrastructure development. So what's your stance on that?
I think there's a few that you can take a look at. I think one of the more important ones is perhaps the level of involvement someone like an infrastructure provider on POW has versus the level of involvement someone on the POS side has. So let's use, for example, the carbon issue that we all have, right? That everyone is kind of pointing the finger at. So like, let's say like miners, may not have their finger on the pulse of like what is necessarily going on the day-to-day at like the application level, and they may not actually care as much if their work is creating a significant carbon footprint versus like on the POS level from the validators, right? We have a responsibility to be beholden to the delegators that are providing their stake to us, and so we have to be responsible and be able to manage that. So, and then also on the infrastructure level, there is also, right, the definitely a difference between literally having to use devices on some of these networks like ASICs to secure the network versus just like you can have cloud-based stake, right? Staking services on POS. But I would say that just from in my opinion, that there's definitely more involvement with the networks themselves that you see on POS versus POW, right? Because you can have like people in the POW environment, like miners or mining farms, who have no idea what's going on in the network, right? They just plug in a machine and they pay the electricity fees and move around if they need to. And that's their contribution. Even though their contribution is important in securing the network, and the side effects of those contributions of profit-seeking behavior is what we all want, right? The side effects are decentralized consensus on Bitcoin. And perhaps that is like the best way of imagining how good behavior can be incentivized in this grand scheme of things. So, and POS is just a bit different. The model is different, but I hope that answered your question.
It does. It does. Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. All right, JK, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Yeah. Let me share my screen really quickly. Give me 1 second. Right, cool. Hopefully it's coming off as full screen. So yeah, so thanks for having us again. Since I take care of like business strategy and operations, I just wanted to go through a bit about like the business of staking as a service, or otherwise known as validators. I can't cover everything. Obviously, it's I could go on for hours talking about like the economics and the business of it, but I just wanted to provide like a very high level overview of like the market we're looking at, the people we're dealing with, the stakeholders we're dealing with. And at the very end, I just wanted to go briefly into like, if I was, starting a validator now, like what sort of steps I would have taken. So I just wanted to give you like, give the audience here a taste of what it would take to become a validator in the current ecosystem today. So yeah, I'm JK, I head strategy and operations, and my background comes from antitrust data analytics, where I looked at a ton of data to find out, questions around price fixing, monopolization, all these sort of fun stuff. And I came to the conclusion that we really needed an alternative system to the systems that existed today. And that's sort of how I fell down the decentralization rabbit hole and started looking at smart contracts, blockchains, different coordination systems. And eventually I ended up trying to figure out how to build out the validator and staking ecosystem, which was just starting off when I first, fell down the rabbit hole. And yeah, we're perpetually hiring at. You should definitely apply. So let's just start with like a very 10 feet overview of like what sort of market we're talking about. And these are numbers I pulled very few days ago, so it does reflect the more recent market drops. But conservatively, I've found that like there's around $416 billion of the circulating market cap. That utilizes staking mechanisms in their design. So these would include proof of stake, protocols. It would also include middleware like the graph, and just aggregating all of that up. The addressable sort of a staking market is around 416 billion, and today of that, around $118 billion is being actively staked today. So you can see on the table, I've pulled out 5 protocols that have the most dollar amount staked today, and you'll be surprised to see like Ethereum's not really high on that list, and that's primarily because there's only about like roughly 4 to 5% of all circulating ETH that's being staked. So just looking at this table, you could say that like there's more room for Ethereum to grow and you'll likely see, of course, their staking amount increasing over the course of the remainder of the year. So we're talking about like a huge market here. It's probably about 2 or 3 times the current sort of DeFi TVL that we're discussing today. That we discuss on the DeFi world today. So it's a very significant market that we're talking about. And so when, as staking as a service provider, as a validator, there's 2 sides of the market that we're addressing. And I wanted to first touch on the protocol side. So in a sense, while like staking is, of course, our sort of our main revenue generator, the other big part of it that is overlooked is that we're here to support protocols, really. We're helping them run the necessary infrastructure that helps secure a blockchain or, middleware. So we're trying to help them run the protocol seamlessly. We're running on their test nets. We're trying to help them, ping any bugs or any issues that we see on their protocol. We also participate actively in their governance, and then we also build out tools and community for these protocols. And if you've probably seen Daniel's earlier presentation, and so Daniel definitely plays a big role here. When I say we're really the big addressable market we're talking about is supporting protocols. And the way we get compensated for our contributions to the protocols are, we receive grants, we receive delegations from the foundation's holdings, and protocols typically also run incentivized testnets. What this means is that even though we're running on a testnet and it's not on mainnet, the protocols do sometimes reward people for participating in the testnet and helping them, debug the protocol before it goes live. And so when thinking about how to approach these protocols, I think there's different ways a validator could position themselves, and I've grouped them up into largely three. Of course, there are a few validators that span across these three categories, or there could be other categories, but I just wanted to really generalize a bit here so that it's easier to digest what sort of positioning a validator can take. And the first one is protocol specialist. There's a few validators that choose to focus on 1 to 5 protocols. And they do so because they're very passionate about the protocols they support, and they add a ton of deep value to the protocols that they're involved with. And then there's multi-protocol validators, and I think Stakefish naturally falls into this category. We support various different protocols, and obviously we won't be able to add as much value as the protocol specialist, but we do try to add some value, such as being active on the governance and then trying to help protocols adopt best practices that we've seen across other protocols. And one category that I've seen increasing these days are that there are a few validators that really run a validator as a side project. What I mean by that is some of the projects that are building on top of, as an example, Solana, they will choose to run a validator on the side in order to bootstrap some of their cost by running that validator. And I've seen this as an increasing trend, and we'll likely see a lot more of these players. And then the second sort of addressable market is of course, helping holders stake. And by that, I mean, we're helping them optimize their staking rewards. We're also helping them abstract how staking works. We're helping them, we're explaining to them how they should be staking, what sort of wallets they should be using, what sort of restrictions they should be aware of. And then we're also, of course, mitigating risk around involved with staking. And obviously, our work here is compensated by the commissions we charge on the stakes that we receive from the holders. Again, I wanted to sort of generally group these stakers into 3 large categories. Again, full disclosure, there might be some holders that really fall outside of this category and span all these categories, but just wanted to help you sort of put this in a framework that you could work with. And so one category, of course, are going to be the exchanges and custodians. Exchanges and custodians, most of them started off as running their own validators, but increasingly you see them sort of sometimes outsource their validator operations as well. And so they need to definitely help their users earn staking rewards, which is why they're a very big participant in the staking world. Of course, there's going to be a ton of funds and whales, and some of these funds also have participated in private sales of some of these protocols, and so they need to stake the tokens that they've earned, and so that's why they're obviously going to be a huge customer of staking services. And then lastly, of course, the most important, there are a ton of community members who are very passionate about a protocol, and staking is basically helping securing a network, and these passionate community members really want to help contribute to the protocol by actively staking. And we're nearing the end, and as I mentioned during the beginning of my presentation, I want to just frame out like how I would be creating my own validator if I was doing one today. I've outlined like 4 large steps. One is, of course, obviously starting to research into a few interested protocols. I do not recommend going into a multi-chain positioning as a multi-chain validator right off the beginning these days. I think it's best to sort of focus in on 1 or 2 protocols that you're very passionate about and try to make a really big impact on those protocols. I think it's then natural that you just come to front stage. So if I were starting a validator today, I would try to find 1 or 2 protocols that I'm really passionate about, and then start like running validators on their testnet before going running validators on their mainnet. And then second, of course, I'd be asking a ton of questions to other validators and core team because there's obviously going to be a ton of questions that are that cannot be answered by the existing documentation. Not only does this help me, but it also helps the teams realize what's sort of missing in the ecosystem. And so I think it's very important to ask a ton of these questions and not be afraid to be wrong sometimes. And then I think after you've gained these sort of knowledge, I think it's natural that your reputation starts building, and you try to become a more active community member. I would also be trying to help out other validators, and then as well as helping the protocol team sometimes debug or help answer them questions on what I feel like is needed in the ecosystem. And then last but not least, obviously at some point you'll need to fundraise or apply for grants. Fundraising, I think, might be a bit challenging, but there's a few validators that have done fantastic fundraisers or been fantastically acquired. So I think it does pave the way, and it does show in validators. So I think they've sort of shown the way that it might potentially be possible to do a fundraising around validators. But also, I think I want to really emphasize applying for grants. There's a lot of foundation teams out there that are willing to help out small validators start off, because it's very important for decentralization of a protocol for small new validators to enter the scene. So I would say if you're trying to aim big, try to do a more VC route, yeah, fundraising is great. But also, I do want to emphasize and encourage people to look out for grants, and try to reach out to foundation teams and say hey, I think I know a ton about this protocol. I think I know how to run a validator. Are there ways you could help me out? And I'm at least so far, most of the foundations have been very open-armed and very willing to help. That's an end to what I've prepared today. I know it's not a ton of stuff, but interesting questions that I could help answer to further, help make this session informative.
Yeah, thank you, JK. I guess going off your last slide, proof of stake is partially meant to push for more decentralization and lower the entrance barrier, so more users can participate in the network. Because with mining, we know we need ASICs and heavier infrastructure loads. And so from, let's say, smaller guy perspective, what do you think, how technically savvy a person needs to be to, let's say, run a validator, and then, then we can consider, because on ETH2, you need 32 ETH to have a validator running, but then I know in other chains it's a different barrier. So let's say if I'm a single guy who just want to play with it and start my own validator just for personal purposes, what's the entrance barrier there?
Yeah, so from the technical sort of requirements, I'd say so it really depends on personal sort of preferences, right? And your skill sets. I'd recommend to just start off on testnets. Starting off on testnets really required no little to entry. You don't need 32 ETH as an example to be on a testnet. You could easily get on a testnet. I think it's best for people to try to jump on the testnet to test out whether or not it's a fit, whether or not you have the technical capabilities of keeping up with a validator on a testnet. And then to answer your other question, entry to barriers to entry, outside of Ethereum, most protocols, there's really not a huge high entry barrier. 32 ETH at this point, because of how ETH prices have been increasing, is pretty prohibitive. But I think on other protocols, it's much easier. And again, as I mentioned, if you've proven yourself on testnets and if you've proven yourself on community channels, foundation teams are going to be more than happy to help out with foundation delegations or grants, which should be able to help you get started off the ground.
Nice. I guess the next question would be more related to Stakefish. So you guys run validators, and institutions can use your service as well as just retail and users. How much institutional clients versus people you serve?
Yeah, our breakdown is interestingly not too skewed towards institutionals. I think per the last estimate, around 15 to 20% of our entire stake is coming from institutional clients. All the rest are coming from community members or individual whales that choose to stay anonymous. So we're pretty happy about how we're positioned right now.
So I assume you have nice UI that people like to use.
Well, interesting thing is we don't offer a UI outside of Ethereum. So we on Ethereum, yes, you need to come to our website to get started staking with us. But outside of that, we direct people to other UI, to other wallets. And this is primarily because we don't, at least right now, we don't want to reinvent the entire stack. We really want to focus in on that infrastructure, that validator level. And if there are good wallets out there, we might as well direct users to those wallets who, spend, their entire days thinking about how to help users protect their private keys, how to help them better interact with the protocol. And so we don't have UI, we direct them to good wallets, and we provide very detailed guides, of course, through videos or just written content. And I think that has chimed well. But outside that also, we live in crypto. We know memes. We understand the community. We live it. And I think that has really chimed well as well.
Okay, so if I want to stake with you, let's say I just bought some coins and want to earn APY on them, where should I start?
Yeah, visit our website, stake.fish, and you'll find on our network section all the different networks that we are currently supporting. Now, if you click on that, you'll find some very basic information about the commissions we charge. And also, if you click on Stake Now, we direct you to a wallet that we think is likely the best wallet to go to. You could go to that wallet, download the wallet, and then you could also click on the videos that we provide, and you could just watch through the video to follow the steps on how you could get started.
Nice. All right, let's get to the Q&A. People have been asking questions. One that I'm fairly interested in: what percentage of your validators run on AWS? I guess how the infrastructure is built. And do you run your own servers? What is on the cloud, etc.?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy to be very transparent on that. The vast majority of our validators do live on cloud service providers. We did manage our own bare metal for a few networks that require hardware, but in most cases, most networks don't really require bare metal level specs. And on top of that, cloud service providers provide us with the flexibility to migrate in case there's connectivity issues, in case there's any issues with, a bare metal, right, anyways needs to sit at some data center, and we need to have engineers physically, close to that, wherever our bare metal sits. And while it feels nice and it sounds nice, it also means that that engineer needs to be there 24/7. I think it does provide some restrictions on how flexible you can be. We're happy to say, I'm happy to be transparent to say that the vast majority currently today is cloud service providers.
Just to also add to that, I think the value in having that type of flexibility is important, especially with being able to quickly migrate to get more decentralized, both from let's say we can break it down into how decentralized a particular network, let's say, for example, Tezos, how decentralized Tezos's network is on what cloud service providers they're using. So let's say, for example, every Tezos validator is using Amazon Web Services to run their validators, and Amazon Web Services goes down, then Tezos goes down, right? You won't have as robust or resilient of a network. And then there's also kind of the reliance of how many validators are actually controlled or managed by how many different separate entities, right? That is, I think, what most people think. And so allowing that flexibility to happen, and that's kind of why we've been working on supporting these initiatives in Africa and other parts of the world, like Latin America, beyond Northeast America and Western Europe, where there's a lot of centralization of validators, both geographically and cloud service provider level, is exactly that, right? As great as bare metal is, right? Maybe that may help with how you can manage latency from from the different nodes that are located in those regions, but right, it's I think probably to promote decentralization, it's extremely valuable. Maybe bare metal, if you own your own data center, obviously the costs are good, but right there. And I will say that there have been very high profile networks that have literally halted because of this exact scenario that I'm telling you about. I won't name them, but yeah, like there were a lot of validators that were using the same cloud service provider in the same region, and that cloud service provider decided to like, hey, we're going to go down for maintenance, and all the validators were not able to transition, and so the network halted.
How do you protect against that? Because I remember, so when I was running my ETH2 validators, I actually had an AWS running, but I also like had another validator without keys just running on my Raspberry Pi. And so that's again, like shows, like some of the networks, you don't have to have a server, like a laptop or, a good computer, or like in my case, like Raspberry Pi managed to, have the loads for ETH2. So how do you guys manage, the fallback in case one of your cloud providers goes down?
I think on the perspective of ETH2, especially in the beginning of the network, we saw a lot of failings happen because of those a lot of issues happen with validators because of those failover concepts, right? As you mentioned, right? You can't operate two at the same time.
Yeah, ETH2 is very strict about that. A lot of people got slashed and
yeah. Exactly. I think JK, Stakefish has never been slashed in its history, right?
Yeah, let's not jinx it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
But
not going
but
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I was just going to add. So our approach has been very, very conservative. We don't do active. Sort of like we don't have an active backup. Primarily because like. Again, it goes back to what Daniel just mentioned. Like active setups sometimes are open to human error, and if that's the case, like that's slashing. And what that means is like you're done as a validator. Your reputation. It's going to take years to sort of win back. Win back the reputation after you've been slashed. So for us, we take a very conservative approach. We don't do an active setup. Rather, thankfully, because we have people all around the world. It has served as an advantage where we have alerting systems and we have at least someone monitoring it, or like we have messages that pop up to Slack. So someone is awake somewhere around the world in our team and will alert the necessary people to jump on the case.
Right.
Yeah, and also I think it depends on the network requirements for that particular node, or there's some that are very expensive to maintain. Right, versus others like Raspberry Pi.
Leads us into the next question. So do you think protocols will lower their requirements to run validators? Like how the dynamic in the protocol development goes? Like do protocols change the way they run validators, update? How does that work?
I think it depends. I could say one part, maybe JK, you have different opinions, but like, there are some networks that need to maintain a high level of throughput that is only possible through a very expensive, relatively expensive infrastructure setup. So,
I think there are two ways to frame that question, and one is on like the financial requirements, and the other being on the technical requirements. On the financial requirements, yes, it'd be good to consistently lower that bound, but at least so far, the sort of like as an example on Ethereum 32 ETH, and then on some other networks, the self bond. These are all requirement because of the economics of proof of stake. I think as more data points do get accumulated, I think protocols. protocol developers will feel comfortable bringing that financial requirement down. We'll see. On the technical requirement side, yes, I totally think that is the goal that protocols will drive for. That's exactly why, like as an example, Nikita, you were able to run, Ethereum on a Raspberry Pi. No other network, I believe, is able to do that today, as of date. And Ethereum has, primarily focused on that because they care. A lot of the client teams, they do care about anyone being able to run a validator at home. And so I think that's the standard that protocols will keep going for, because again, you've mentioned once that like the golden standard for proof of stake is to consistently lower the barrier so anyone can participate in the consensus.
Yeah, and on the technical side, it's much easier to update because you just develop a new client that is more efficient. Let's say, Prism and Lighthouse, those clients for ETH2, they have consistently lowered the memory requirements. They figure out new efficient ways to store the data, process the data, and that's all closer to hardware. It doesn't require consensus, so they just release new client version. So the barrier is always, people keep pushing it down as far as like technical requirements. All right, a question for you. Can we stake on the phone? So can I stake on my phone, like with Stakefish, I guess, and more broadly across the industry?
I'll take the assumption that, by stake, it could mean two things. It could mean running your own validator or just simply, delegating your stake to an operator like us. To answer the easier question, yeah, you could download a wallet on your phone to delegate your stake to a service like ours. And so as long as your phone is a smartphone and can download a wallet, yeah, it's very easy to stake your coins to another validator. Now, going to the other question of can you run a validator on your phone? At least as of today, this would be impossible to do. I don't think there's any protocols as of date where you could literally fit a full node into a phone. I mean, Nikita, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's physically impossible today. But there are protocols that are working to try to make that feasible. Like as an example, Mina, right? That's sort of their entire sort of approach where they're trying to use recursive ZK knowledge proofs to reduce the size of a blockchain and to help anyone run full nodes on their phones.
Yeah, running a validator on the phone hits kind of like a few issues. First is memory requirements, because if you're running a validator, you need to run a node and usually need a lot of storage for that. But then also, I guess you don't really want to thrust the processor on your phone. The processor and the phones are pretty good and could handle the loads, but then you probably wouldn't be able to like enjoy your phone that much. So that's probably not the best idea because it's just gonna be slow. But don't quote me on that. I haven't done enough research, but that's just my field. So all right, another question, like what countries do you service most? And like what are the countries you wish you could service? Like how distributed across the world you are?
Ooh, this is very interesting. And so there's no way to, since we interact with our users indirectly, what I mean by that is we're both agree, like our users and our service, we're not interacting directly per se. We're interacting through the protocols or through the blockchain. Mostly all handled through either smart contracts or rules defined by the protocol itself. So there's literally no way for us to exactly know the entire geographical distribution of our customers, but we can proxy them from the website, the hits we get from on our website. And at least on our website per our website traffic, we see around like 40% of traffic coming from North America, 40% coming from all of Asia, and the remainder coming from Africa and Europe. So We're happy that we have a pretty fairly distributed web traffic hit. And I think it's largely because of how focused we are on trying to make sure our website is multilingual. We, I believe, support around 16 languages on our website today. If there are any languages you want to see, please let us know and we'll try to support that. But I think it's just important that we service anyone around the world, because again, the whole reason why everyone's so into blockchain, we're building all of this, is because we want to provide access to anyone and everyone. We want to empower anyone around the world.
Thank you, JK. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, there's one question that not so much related to, I guess, the business of staking, but Nahid asked, pardon my ignorance, but would like to know how Stakefish differs from Donkey Finance. Do you guys know about Donkey Finance? I did Google them, and I guess maybe I can take that question, but Donkey Finance seems to be more of like a yield farming solution. So you just stake your coins just like any DeFi yield farming, while Stakefish is an infrastructure provider. So they are supporting layer ones, which are like the blockchain, the underlying technology of the blockchain itself, and supporting the ecosystem, while Donkey Finance does that for protocols, apps that run on those decentralized chains.
Yeah, I took a brief look to right now, and it does seem like a DeFi product. So staking, the word itself has become, I think, generalized at time. But at least staking that we do at Stakefish is mostly related to, we help stake coins that are critical to securing a protocol. So I think that's the way to see it. Whereas in most DeFi protocols, staking is more of a way to sort of, create liquidity sinks, and then, but also to like try to earn the revenue that the protocol, the DeFi product itself is yielding. So there's a difference there.
Thank you. All right, we're reaching the top of the hour, so let's get to the most uploaded question now. What roles are you currently hiring for at Stakefish?
Wow, that's a great question. So yes, our primary focus is on the DevOps and infrastructure side, and generally software engineers, obviously. But also like we're open to hiring any talented individuals, really. So you could go to our website on our jobs website to check out the roles that are open, but these are not the extent of the roles we're hiring. If you're a very passionate individual, you want to get your feet into the ecosystem, please do reach out to our general opportunities role. And we could discuss, and we'll try to find a role that fits you. And so, please do apply. I encourage it.
Thank you. Thank you, JK. Yeah, I think these are all the questions, but I do have one last question, which is a little more personal. So running a validator, let's say, on ETH2, we've seen there was like a finality issue, like a bit after they started, and also like some chains sometimes struggle, or, there could be a failure on your end, could be, some operational error or cloud services. So is there a way to mitigate risk on your end so the users that use you don't suffer from that? And that's a personal question, because as I said, I run a DeFi coverage protocol, and we're sort of a insurance alternative where people can hedge the risk. So are there ways what risks are there with staking with you, and how can you hedge those risks?
Yeah, JK, you want to take it? Or
I mean, you could start off, and then I could also add on.
Yeah, I think there's client diversity reliance. So there's different clients that we, at least on ETH2, that we can rely on, and also, as JK had mentioned before, the types of failover services or lack of that people can provide.
I think these are there are actions we take, but it's very hard to prove them, right? I would love for there to be decentralized insurance available so that like we could really prove that there are like actual funds that could kick in case there are any issues. I think the biggest challenge currently right now is trying to figure out the how these insurance would be resolved. Like as an example, if there are issues, where we're offline for a very long time and we get slashed, like, what sort of terms, what are the conditions that would trigger a payout from the insurance's end? I think this is largely an unanswered question right now. And I think that's the key reason why we're not seeing a ton of insurers out there for validators. So, I'm hoping this gets created. If anyone's building that, please do reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions. But yeah, there's a ton of actions we're taking on our end, but I know it's very hard to prove that. So hopefully, fingers crossed, decentralized insurance very soon.
Thank you. Yeah, this could be a product that we want to develop, but I think we're reaching our allocated hour. So PG stepping in.
Yes, maybe Solus V2 will have a validator coverage, maybe. Who knows?
It's a huge market. I think somebody should come and take it.
Right on. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say there was one team that was working on it, but there wasn't a ton of interest then. But this was during the bear of the bear, so things might be different right now.
Sounds good.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for this amazing talk. I'm sharing some links in the chat. If you're not a BAF member, you want to become a BAF member, please fill out our membership application. It's completely free. It takes 5 minutes. It's a way for us to know, what you're looking for in the crypto industry, match with opportunities. We have research opportunities, job opportunities, educational opportunities as well. Please follow our YouTube channel. That helps a lot, pushing this great content forward. We're going to be uploading the recording of this conversation on our YouTube channel in case you missed something. And also follow us on Twitter and follow Stakefish. They're doing an amazing work. So happy to have you guys here. JK, thanks for making the time from South Korea. Daniel, I think you're not over there as well, or I knew there were different timelines, but thank you very much for the flexibility. Nikita, thank you for being a great moderator. If you have more questions, I'm not sure if Daniel and JK can stick around for our networking portion. In case so, please make sure to have your camera and mic on, so you can hop on and off different tables and meet new people and ask questions directly to the speakers. Other than that, Daniel, JK, Nikita, thank you so much, and I'll see you networking.
Yeah, thank you, PG, and pleasure to meet you, Daniel and JK.
Thank you, PG, for putting this together, and thank you, Nick, for moderating. It was a lot of fun.
Likewise. See you guys.
Have a good one.